Live from Washington, I'm Aisha Tanzeem and you're watching Access Point. Hello and welcome. 5 days after militants attacked Pakistan's biggest airport in Karachi, several analysts call the state's response indecisive. Meanwhile, militants and ordinary people alike are fleeing North Waziristan for fear of a military operation. Would Karachi attacks be the end to the idea of peace talks? What did they teach us about the militants? And what should we expect next? Let's ask our guests. Daniel Marquis is a South Asia expert at the Council of Foreign Relations. He's joining us from their studios in Washington. Rustam Shah Mohmand was formerly Pakistan's ambassador to Afghanistan. He's also a well-known authority on the region. Dr. Hassan Askari Rizvi is a political analyst. He's joining us from Lahore via telephone. And Iftikhar Rashid is a former IG for Islamabad and the Motorway Police. Gentlemen, welcome to Access Point.
Thank you.
Ambassador Mohmand, let me start with you. Since you have another commitment and you have to leave, let me ask you, is an operation in North Waziristan the answer?
Well, I think it's going to happen now, very soon. I think, as far as I know, the decision to that effect has been made already. And it's a matter of time when the operation would start. Whether it would address the issues and it would resolve the situation over there in the North Waziristan agency. There are different opinions. My own view, I don't think the operation really would address all the issues. What is going to happen is that lots of people are going to be uprooted. Many innocent people would certainly be harmed. They'll come in the harm's way, and there'll be certainly a migration also towards the neighboring province of Khost in Afghanistan. And the people who are wanted by the state would just go across and would not be caught. And this is what has been happening in all the tribal areas in the past.
Actually, that's what I was going to ask you, that reportedly a lot of militants have been slipping across the border, both only to neighboring provinces and over to the Afghanistan side. So, in your opinion, how many of them are still left there? Or will any be left there by the time the operation happens?
I don't think they're going to wait for the operation and for the security forces to hit them and target them or capture them. So I think they would already be very near the border. And as soon as the operation starts, they would just go across the border. You remember when the SWAT operation was launched, and there was a displacement of 3 million people in a span of 1 month, which is unprecedented. But the people who were wanted by the state, like Fazlullah, etc., they went across the border, and the border with Afghanistan is very, very far away from SWAT, but they still could escape. So in this situation, North Waziristan is just on the border with Afghanistan, and I don't think any of the wanted people would really be caught or targeted or harmed. But the rank-and-file tribesmen certainly
will be uprooted. But Ambassador Mohmand, even though in Swat people moved, some militants escaped, but Swat was still cleaned up. And today's Swat situation is much better than it was at that time. People say North Waziristan has become a hub of terrorist activity and a planning ground. Would it not help to at least clean it up and not give them a safe haven?
Well, to an extent, yes. North Waziristan is a little different from South Waziristan agency or other agencies. It has very few hideouts. Most of the areas of plain areas like Mirali and Miran Shah, Gutta Khel and Spinwam, these are very plain areas. There are very few mountains there, I mean very low hills, and there are no hideouts there. Some hideouts are there in the remote areas, but mostly it's a plain area. And it is impossible for people to hide when the operation would start. They'll have to go across the border for safety and security. And I think that is what is going to happen. And I'm sure that the majority of them would already be at the border. They would be crossing over very soon. So I think that one thing that operation would do is that the security forces would deploy themselves in area where some foreign militants were hiding or were operating, and that will be a success for the security forces, as you said. But at what cost and how long would that effect be, and whether the people who are wanted by the government, by the state, whether they're going to return to those areas once the security forces would begin to withdraw or would begin to diminish their presence there, that remains to be seen.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Rustam Shah Mohmand, who was joining us via telephone from Islamabad. Once again, let's return to our other guest. Daniel Marquis is in the CFR studios in Washington. Daniel, you heard Ambassador Mohmand. What do you think about this?
Well, I think that he's right, that there is no short-term military fix to what is obviously a long-term problem of militancy, of terrorism, even of extremism born of difficult socioeconomic and political factors in Pakistan, both on the border and increasingly in other parts of the country as well. But I guess I would agree more with the line of your questions, which suggests that at times there is a need for a military disruption, a disruption of planning, of operations along the border that have been going on for too long, have been widely recognized as responsible for acts of terrorism like in Karachi this past week and many others as well, and a cleanup operation of the sort that you described within narrow tactical bounds would have benefits.
Okay, thanks. Mr. Afzal Shigri, I want you to tell us, since you have a policing and terrorism background, the attack in Karachi, what does that tell us about the militants and their capabilities? We saw attacks on the Mehran Naval Air Base and other places where the militants held the security forces off for 17 hours, and they were really hard targets. This was a softer target, but the security forces were able to overcome in 5 hours, and not major damage despite the loss of life. What does it tell us? Mr. Rashid, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, what does this attack tell you about the militants and their capability?
The militants, I'll be very frank and candid, and I'll not mince any words.
Please.
The militants have tremendous capability. But over the years, we have been a soft state. Not only the politicians, but also the army and the bureaucrats. Mr. Mohmand, whom I respect a lot, what he was saying was neither here nor there. What we need is a proper military operation in North Waziristan and other areas which are disturbed. That is the only solution to the problem. And if we keep on doing shuff and huff, then we are going to end up nowhere. That is my comment.
Okay, stay with us. Dr. Hassan Askari Rizvi, I want to come to you. One of the fears of the Nawaz government is that in case of a military operation, there'll be more attacks in the heartland of Pakistan, just like the attacks on Karachi. So was this attack by militants maybe a message to the Nawaz administration saying, look what we can do, and if you come after us in North Waziristan, there'll be more of the same?
I think the message was very clear that they want to deter the Pakistani government not to go for any military operation in the tribal areas because they mean Taliban have the capacity to strike in mainland Pakistan because they have created strong roots and linkages in the mainland Pakistan. And the last 3-4 months, which were wasted in the name of talks, have also given them enough opportunity to revive their strength and spread out in mainland Pakistan to deal with the situation if and when military action is taken. Yes, it is a kind of a message, one, that if you do something, we can retaliate. And secondly, it has been very clearly shown that they have enough capability to strike at the Pakistani state. And finally, this has also shown that Taliban are very clear-minded in their objectives. What do they want? They want to humble the Pakistani state, whereas Pakistani government, federal government, as well as most of the political leaders are confused and are living in a state of denial where they are not prepared to accept that the Pakistani state faces a very serious threat of being overwhelmed by militant and become a dysfunctional state.
Mr. Markey, do you think the state's living in denial, or maybe it's quite aware of the repercussions of an operation and knows that it doesn't have the capacity to deal with it in terms of police and intelligence? What do you think?
Well, I think here in Washington we've always perceived that it's sort of a combination of the two. This denial, I think, is most pronounced among, say, Pakistani opposition politicians like Imran Khan, who speak of the Taliban as if they're brothers who can just be brought in from the cold, that the state is morally at some level of equality with these kinds of terrorist groups. So there is a denial there of what seems to be the reality, at least from a Washington perspective. But there's also a capability problem. I mean, you know, the sophistication of the attack on Karachi Airport is something that does send a chilling message, not only to Pakistan, but to the wider world about just how bad things have gotten there. Now, the Pakistani government should, in my opinion, see that as more reason to act firmly, to act quickly, and in many ways ruthlessly, rather than to seek peace talks and otherwise. But it is a reason for fear and concern, and there are reasons to believe that things will get worse before they get better.
Okay, well, Mr. Rashid, tell me, what does the state need in terms of its policing capability and in terms of its intelligence capability to fight a widespread menace like this, and where does Pakistan stand in that regard?
Before I respond to that question, I must compliment Mr. Rizvi for a very, very correct analysis of the situation. Now, about the capability and the intelligence and everything, I can tell you that the intelligence in all these attacks, the failure was of intelligence. Otherwise, if proper intelligence is provided, I don't see any reason that why the forces who are trained, who are equipped, they cannot perform. They can perform. The unfortunate part is that it is a total intelligence failure, and that is why the Karachi attack happened. And the second thing is that, responding to Mr. Momen's observation that people will go to Afghanistan, nobody will be caught, we are already hosting about 5 million Afghanis, and out of those 5 million, I think about 10% are total hardened criminals or terrorists. If they want to flee to Afghanistan, what is their harm? Let them go to Afghanistan. We have to act. We have to act very, very aggressively, very firmly, and I think this problem can be solved if the political will is there.
Okay, Dr. Rizvi, if the militants flee over the border to the Afghanistan side, and the Afghan government has already been complaining that Pakistan's firing artillery fire over the border, will Pakistani forces follow them or fire across the border? And how do you see this problem developing? For a long time, Afghanistan blamed Pakistan for providing safe havens. Now, Pakistan blames Afghanistan for sheltering Mullah Fazlullah and others. So is there any chance they might work together?
Well, it depends on the outlook of the new president who would assume office after the second round. If Afghanistan wants to avoid a situation very similar to the one faced by the Iraqi government at the moment, the new government will have to improve its relations with the neighboring states, the Central Asian states that share border. But more important than that would be Iran and Pakistan. Unless Iran and Pakistan and Afghanistan work together, the problem of cross-border movement cannot be effectively tackled. Yes, some of these people from North Waziristan would cross over to Afghanistan, which is not very unusual because these kind of crossings take place all the time. And some of the people from Swat also crossed over via Dir to Afghanistan, but nevertheless Pakistan got control of Swat. What Pakistan needs is to take a general control of North Waziristan so that those people who are returning to North Waziristan later will have to face Pakistan army. At the moment, some parts of North Waziristan are no man land, where Pakistani state authority does not exist in the real terms. Therefore, once Pakistan takes over major parts of North Waziristan, then other steps will have to be taken because military action does not solve all problems. However, under certain circumstances, military action becomes one important, perhaps the first important steps, and then all other steps have to follow, as has been the case in Swat area. Therefore, simply fearing that people will cross over to Afghanistan, people will move over to mainland Pakistan, and people will be displaced. Yes, these things are going to happen, but these are going to be there if you want to control the situation. The other option is let things go on, and over a period of time, the cost of military action in tribal areas will be increased, because if 2014 passes without any action, and the cost of doing the same thing after the Americans and NATO troops have left will increase many times. So it's the decision of the government whether they want to pay the price now or they want to pay a higher price in 2015 and 16.
Mr. Markey, it's easy to say Pakistan and Afghanistan and Iran should work together, but they haven't been working together. That's what the U.S. has been trying to get them to do for the last 10 years. So have you seen any change in the attitude sitting in Washington, either on the Pakistani side or on the Afghan side? Any understanding that they may come together and work together?
Well, of course, in Afghanistan, we're sitting here right before the next presidential election, so it remains to be seen what the new Afghan government will do. There's reason for hope, though, that a new Afghan government will turn over a new page in its relationship with Islamabad. That we'll see somewhat of a better working relationship there. But the other thing that I think people in Washington have noticed is that the Pakistani military, at least, if not the civilian government, appears to be increasingly inclined to take military action. I think that there are excellent reasons to believe this, but that they feel that they've been hamstrung in their desire by these peace talks that have been ongoing. That's a bit of a shift from the past. Certainly in the last Pakistani civilian government, there were promises from the Pakistani military that they would go ahead with an operation in North Waziristan. U.S. government officials were expecting that, never actually saw it, were disappointed that they didn't see it. And it would have been better had Pakistan acted in 2013 than now in 2014. And Professor Hassan Askari Rizvi is right that it will be even harder in 2015, 2016, looking ahead.
Okay, so if the military does take action, and as we heard Ambassador Rustam Shah moments say, a decision has been taken in that regard, Mr. Afzal Shigri, in your opinion, what are the prerequisites? What makes for a successful operation? Mr. Rashid?
That's why I didn't respond. What I feel is that you made a comment that America has been trying to forge a relationship between Afghanistan and Iran and Pakistan. This may be my last interview on the Voice of America. I think America is the main villain. America is the main villain. America doesn't want us to be spies. You must understand that. And therefore, this premises is absolutely wrong that America wanted Iran and Pakistan and Afghanistan to work together. Coming back to North Waziristan, I think the people who will flee back to Afghanistan are Afghanis themselves. Therefore, I think that's no issue with us.
What on the Pakistani side would you... Okay, hold on. I'll come back to that. But let me come back to Mr. Markey. Mr. Markey, America doesn't want Afghanistan, Pakistan, and maybe even Iran to work together, at least on this issue?
Well, in my previous answer, I mean, I think I broke the two things apart. The United States has had a problem being constructive in its dealings with Iran inside of Afghanistan. Certainly has other fish to fry with Iran, starting with Iran's nuclear program, but extending into Iran's activities in the rest of the broader Middle East. And so that's put some serious barriers and obstacles to U.S. cooperation with Iran, to U.S. desire to encourage Iran inside of Afghanistan in a variety of ways that might be constructive just there. But on the Afghanistan-Pakistan business, I think there the United States really has wanted to see better cooperation across that border. There I might suggest they've had a number of trilateral meetings dating all the way back to when President Musharraf was in. Not entirely successful, certainly, but the desire has been there to encourage a better working relationship.
Okay, Dr. Rizvi, if the military goes for an operation, do they have the intelligence? Do they have the prerequisites? What do they need to do to make it successful, like SWAT is considered successful by some?
I think they will adopt a different strategy in North Waziristan, and we already have indication what would they do. They would use air power in the initial stage, as they have been doing in the past, and then the ground troops will follow. And the objective will not be to occupy each and every part of North Waziristan. They, I think, have enough information as to the hideouts of Pakistani Taliban, their allies, and other foreign militants that are hiding there. So they would like to dislocate and destroy their hideouts and take control of those areas where these groups are hiding. In other parts of North Waziristan, they are not going to undertake any operation. The objective would be to, in a way, if possible, completely downgrade the capacity of these militants and not to let them have an area where they could train their people or suicide bombers.
So Dr. Rizvi, if that's the aim, how will they separate the Haqqanis or other Afghan Talibans from the rest of the militants in that area?
I think so far as Haqqanis are concerned, my own feeling is that the top leadership of Haqqani is no longer in North Waziristan because they are expecting a military action, and these Haqqanis would move to Afghanistan because they operate in both areas, and they are not going to directly hit the areas where Haqqanis are. Whereas some of their ordinary people may be hit, because once you are striking, you can become victim. But primarily the attack would be targeted at Pakistani Taliban, also Punjabi Taliban, which are there, then some Central Asian from Xinjiang province of China. These kind of elements are there. They are going to be targeted, but not necessarily targeting the Haqqani.
Okay. Mr. Rashid, I'm very curious to know, there's an impression and there's evidence behind that. Okay, maybe there's some disturbance in your phone.
Can you repeat that? There was a bad signal, I couldn't hear you.
Yes, there seems to be some disturbance. Let me repeat the question. So, there is an impression, and a lot of analysts in Pakistan and Washington agree, that Pakistani military seems to favor the Afghan Taliban, the Haqqani group, maybe even shelter them to a certain extent while going after TTP. Do you see a similar separation in the police department when you're going after them in the city centers?
I think that is an issue of the past. It used to be like that. my view is, maybe I'm wrong, my view is it's no longer true. Now the army will target every terrorist.
What about the police in the city centers? Because there seem to be organizations, maybe under different names from when they were banned, but some of them still seem to be very active in the cities. So does the police go after everybody?
You are absolutely right. We have to suffer. We have to pay for this, what we've done for the last 40 years. But I think ultimately if we take strong action against the militants, police and army, and intelligence agencies also perform.
And is the police ready for that? Is the Pakistani police ready for that? Are they trained? Do they have the resources?
Of course they have. Of course they have. I'm a policeman. You put me in charge of anything, and I think I'm able to deliver. But the political will has to be there. That is the only issue.
Okay, so Mr. Markey, the police is ready to deliver. The military seems to be willing to go for an operation. Why do you think the political will is not there, even though the population is suffering?
Well, there's a broad issue here that the government of Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif has, at least from this angle, seemed hesitant and slow on a variety of fronts. This seems to have to do with a style of governing that has centralized a lot of power and authority in the Prime Minister's hands alone, little delegation to trusted advisors or otherwise. That's the beginning. Then there is, I think, this concern that the Prime Minister and his party, in particular in Punjab, will be hit where they will really be hurt. And they have been very reluctant to accept that kind of risk. And then there's the third point, which is that they are being hammered by opposition politicians who suggest that there are other, less painful ways to deal with this problem. Imran Khan, in particular, I think has been playing that card. I think it's disingenuous. I think that it's an incorrect assertion, but it's something that Nawaz Sharif will be sensitive to because Imran Khan challenges him on his home turf in Punjab from the center right, in a place where he has traditionally held sway, and he's not eager to cede that ground to an opposition party. All of these things, combined with a difficult civil-military relationship, that is, the Prime Minister has long had his difficulties with the Pakistani army, and he continues, I think, to fear that the army will put pressure on him in ways that will make him uncomfortable, and that operations may benefit the army, ultimately, if they're successful, but if they're not successful, that he'll be the one to pay the political price. All these things make it a high-risk, relatively low-reward proposition in the near term, but one that he really has to take on anyway.
Okay, well, since Mr. Imran Khan's representative is not here, we know that what he really believes in is that military action is not the solution, that you should talk to the Taliban and separate at least those who want to talk to you, and then maybe go after those that you don't want to talk to you. Our analysts seem to suggest that it's time for action. I wish we could talk more because the subject needs more discussion. But we don't have time. We're almost out of time. Before we leave, I want to thank our guest, Daniel Markey of the Council on Foreign Relations, who was joining us from their studios in Washington. Ambassador Rustam Shah Momin joined us earlier in the show. He was with us via telephone. Dr. Hassan Askari Rizvi, a well-known political analyst, is joining us from Lahore via telephone, and Mr. Iftikhar Rashid from the police of Pakistan, a very important part of this debate. Thank you all for joining us, and thank you for watching. We'll look for your questions, comments, concerns on Facebook, and follow us on Twitter. Goodbye.